All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
I am delighted to be home. Thank you. I'm buoyed and overwhelmed and humbled and encouraged by your recorded applause. Thank you, everyone. It is a great Monday, and I have such a big show, overstuffed as it is. You will like it. Gary Dietrich joins us, bottom of the hour. Yeah, the iHeart Radio and CBS television political analyst, and the brilliant best-selling author. And when it comes to decoding Trump, and more than Trump, the institutions around Donald Trump, around American society and international, I'm going to suggest privileges that are afforded to the wealthiest and the institutions they control. There is really she is almost without peer in terms of the explaining of it and the exposing of it. The investigative journalist, best-selling author Sarah Kendzior joins us in hour two. And I'm going to get into Epstein, and I mention it in the context of Sarah too, also because Sarah has written extensively on the Epstein case, and the Epstein, when I say case, I mean the situations and problems and attention around the Jeffrey Epstein files, who Epstein was, what Epstein was about, the interlocking parts associated with Jeffrey Epstein, the international trafficking ring that accompanied Jeffrey Epstein, the international money laundering ring that accompanied Jeffrey Epstein. She's written extensively about these things. And so when I talk about Jeffrey Epstein, maybe you can even sense it in the relation of what Sarah has written of. She puts it in a context that extends even beyond the horror, which is the trafficking of women around the world, and perhaps young men as well. But the human trafficking associated with Jeffrey Epstein is, believe it or not, as horrible as it is, only one aspect of the entire Epstein case, again, the Epstein situation. And the reason it's particularly relevant, I mean, it's sort of like excruciatingly relevant now, is because as the conversation seems to have crested, I'm talking about the conversations on Capitol Hill, the jihad to get these files released, the information released. What is clear is that there is a whole lot here that is nothing to do so much with the horror, but it involves the way the horror spills over onto very wealthy people and very well-established institutions internationally. So again, that's the overview. Sarah will be here. I'm really going to have her get into this because she discusses it in huge detail and really rich explanation in one of her books. I believe Hidden in Plain Sight, I think is the book. I remember reading it and just going, wow, this is unreal. And yet it took years. I mean, Hidden in Plain Sight, I think she wrote in 2022 or 2020. And it's taken years now to get to this moment. So we'll get into, what this moment means, what this moment is. And by the way, it's of course not what it seems. Donald Trump, who's reversed field on Epstein, hasn't really reversed field. I mean, he has in terms of what he said publicly, but there is a way in which Trump is trying to conceal what can be released by creating investigations at the Justice Department around Epstein and Democrats that by definition would prevent the release of certain information in an ongoing investigation. So I'm going to get to all of this, okay? And I've got Venezuela to talk about. I mean, is this guy really going to create a land war or any kind of land action in Venezuela? I don't think so. I get it. He's moved a lot of hardware there. But we'll talk more about this. I see a lot of what Trump does as performative, even with the military. I know it seems incredible to say. What do you mean? You mean he'd actually move these huge aircraft carriers and troops to various parts of the world, and it's just saber rattling? Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. He did it in his first term, moving all of those troops to the southern border because of the caravan that was coming. It's a bunch of guys in jeans and T-shirts just trying to flee the horror south of the border. But he has the American troops go down there at Christmas time with a show of force. It's crazy. But it's very Trumpian. It has the additional virtue of being distracting, right, from this conversation around what we were talking about, Epstein. So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself, but there's all of that. Harry Magnan, welcome back. Mo Thompson. Mo Kelly, thank you, Harry. Yeah. Mo Kelly was great. Thank you very much to all of you remarkables, everybody who finds himself on this show as part of our community. We appreciate you and the way in which you have become part of this community. If you're new here, we are a 2-hour live show, 2 to 4 in the East, 11 to 1 in the West. We are coming from the United States of America, troubled as we are, and as we watch our democracy and our liberties and our freedoms and our justice system melt away, it's nice to have you on board. Yes, it really is. And to the extent, this is what I was going to say, that you are part of the community, I appreciate you supporting our guest hosts and making life easier on them. Richard Delamater says, welcome home, bro. You bring home my package. I was in Colombia. Thank you, Richard. And big shout out to you.
Big shout out.
Appreciate the super chat. I was in Colombia for a wedding. Courtney and I went down there. I'd never been to Colombia before. And they've got the reputation around, I feel like the reputation around cocaine. Maybe I'm naive, but I feel like that's sort of the old rep of Colombia. But maybe it's still, still a real thing. I mean, the drug cartels in Medellin, and, the Medellin drug cartel was. So I'm, again, maybe naive and thinking, I didn't hear anything about drugs the whole time I was down there. And I was expecting, to be greeted by, one of those narco guys, or at least see one. No. I think you'd probably find a bigger drug presence in a place like Mexico, to be perfectly honest. I mean, like in some of those narco gangs have taken over even tourist spots like Acapulco. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we were there for a wedding, so there were no drugs being passed around. But Tom says, thanks for not being kidnapped, Mark. Welcome back, Tom.
Did you feel safe when you were there?
What's that?
Did you feel safe when you were there?
I did. Okay. I mean, I think you feel as safe as you do in like New York City. You know what I mean? Or I didn't. Yeah, there was no. Now the problem, of course, is
Kim. How are you?
That you don't speak. I speak Spanish, but my problem is I speak with a very good accent, and so people think I speak Spanish very well because the words that come out of my mouth sound authentic. And then they just blast like a fire hose, this Spanish
and
back in there.
Like,
I can't understand a word being said. Yeah. Glad you made it home with both kidneys intact, says Tammy.
Big shout out.
Thank you. Thank you for the $5 super chat. I did send Tony a couple of pictures, and before I get into the heavy stuff, Tony, I think, although he may have dropped out, I think he's had internet problems over the last.
Oh, no. And I don't think
we've had a weird thing. I was watching from Colombia as best I could. Karen says, Acapulco was bad a long time ago. I remember decades ago, soldiers patrolling it may not be so bad anymore. So apologies to our Acapulco viewers and listeners. But I think Tony's, internet might have gone off, and I was watching from Colombia, and all of a sudden Tony would go away. So maybe that's the case. So the good news for all of you is it spares you pictures from my vacation. Right. But some people had asked for it. That's why I put some together. Go ahead.
I caught a couple of your Instagram posts where it looked like it was very festive, lots of music, lots of dancing.
Yeah, it was a wedding. So yeah, it was a very festive, really, really beautiful, and a lot of fun, and a reconnect with old friends. So for me, it was really quite special. I was very happy to be able to go to this place I'd always wanted to go. The weather's sort of like Miami. You may wonder, is Colombia, is it north or south of the equator? I ask you Americans, we're not, the thing about being in America, we don't really need to know anything, man, because we're America. You know what, dude? You guys have to know something, the rest of the world, but we're Americans. The myth of American exceptionalism lives. So I ask you Americans, Colombia, is it north or south of the equator? The weather in Colombia was hot and humid. Is it north or south of the equator? North, says Tom. William says north. In the chat, they are saying norte, says John Watson. There is a shot from the Colombian wedding. Who said it? Randy said both, and the answer is both.
Okay.
Colombia is both north and south of the equator. If you get a map out, Colombia is one of those places, north and south. These are some shots from the wedding. There were flowers. It looked like a florist's son was getting married. Beautiful. There were so many flowers.
Tropical flowers. Wow.
Yeah. And it was really quite special. And so at this wonderful hotel in Barranquilla, the Hotel El Prado, that it sort of looked very much like a resort that you might find in the late 1920s or 1930s. It had kind of an old world style to it. Really, really cool. That was that's Courtney with our bags at the base of the stairway. I make her carry all the bags. Yeah. You can just blast through these, Tony. We were just blast through them, like boom, boom, boom. Or maybe you can't because of the way they're configured. But anyway, yeah, that's my friends and myself, and this is isn't that cool? It's that was the presentation at the hotel, and this
beautiful.
Yeah, and some of the entertainment there in Colombia. That's in Cartagena. We went on to Cartagena after the wedding in Barranquilla. And those are where we stayed. I guess these are like vacation pictures. That's the diarrhea medication that I was taking. I'm still having that intravenously administered every few hours. These are all scrambled from different places. But that back in Barranquilla, that's again the Hotel El Prado. I recommend it. Old school style and charm. And but again, we're spending way too long on these pictures. You can just bam, bam, bam.
Yeah. Hot dogs? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I took some pictures for you, kid. That's the groom. How about it for the groom? That was pretty great.
Cute.
Brett, cute. Brett is the groom. He's just wonderful. And this is the hotel. Again, these are all scrambled. This is a hotel in Cartagena, which is a super cool hotel also, kind of a boutique-y hotel with a, and that is the La Gata. It's the cat, yeah.
Colombian cat. Ooh.
That's also in Cartagena. So these are all pics. Anyway, great spot. That was the pool in the courtyard. So cool, man. There's a lot of this where the hotel is built up around the pool. That's the art district in Cartagena. You can see some of the cool streets, the narrow streets there, and the bright colors, all reflective of this art community. And it was really a wonderful. If there were no drugs, you went to the wrong parties, says Jim. So this is some of the live entertainment at the dinners. It was really quite special. Anyway, very, very cool. Oh, there's the bride, Jessica, at the top of the stairs. She was wonderful. Again, all of these pictures are scrambled. This is in Cartagena. That's the picture of Colombian star Sofia Vergara, everybody. Yes, they have a statue. Look at how big that statue is. That's for Sofia Vergara, but it's just one of two statues. That is the
big
statue
shout out
Shakira, everyone. That's the Colombian singer Shakira, and that's Courtney and myself there in front of the statues. So, and there we are at the Tiburon, which is the shark. You can see kind of the shark.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's great. Anyway, she's tall. About Shakira, yeah, she's really much bigger in the.
Did it make you want to move your hips? Where you like hips don't lie?
Well, my hips don't lie anymore. That is what happened. All right, very well done. Okay.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thank you again to Mo Kelly for filling in, and thank you all for the support. Smash the like button, which is the way we have to do it in YouTube land.
With your iron rod.
The President of the United States has changed his mind. He's kind of seen the way the mob is running, and he's seeing that he and those who are desperately trying to prevent the release of information around the Epstein case and the Epstein investigation, he's seeing that they are losing the public conversation. It's clear, right? Feels a little to me like the way Biden was brought to realize, dude, you're going to lose to this guy Trump. You ought to drop out of the race, or whatever they told him. Yeah. And I think in this case, Trump doesn't need to be told that. He sees it. So he's doing something cleverly, in my judgment. I mean, almost devilishly clever. He's saying, I want these files released. I want the Epstein investigation materials released, while simultaneously saying, I want my Justice Department to investigate the connections of powerful Democrats to Jeffrey Epstein and the horrors of the Jeffrey Epstein case. He doesn't use the word horrors, of course, but I see the beauty in that from a Trump standpoint. You can seem as though you're, oh, yeah, well, you know, we've got nothing to hide. Absolutely. You know what? We've got nothing to hide. Yeah, you've got nothing to hide. That's why you have spent every bit of political capital trying to keep this from being released. You've had Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino. These are people who are all calling for the release of the Epstein information. You have them all reversing their initial and continued calls for the release of that information so that they're on the same page with you now that you're in power, Donald Trump. And saying everything from there is no there to I'm going to review them. It's unclear. We can't put a case together. You have them doing all of this to prevent the information release. But now you say, you know what? We've got nothing to hide. So they will again have to reverse field. But the devilishly clever part is that by calling for the investigation of Democrats and by Bondi saying, which, by the way, is a watershed moment in American judicial history, where the president says, literally, investigate my enemies. Not literally, did he say, investigate Democrats. And we know, ergo, you know, my enemies. Investigate their connection. Bondi saying, this is the watershed moment. Absolutely, sir, I'll investigate. And by so doing, these ongoing investigations will prevent the release of some of this information. Now, one last thing, and then I'll play a little bit of the sound from over the weekend, etc. The last thing is, it is unclear what's there. It is likely that we know that Trump is wrapped up in this. But I think what we're going to find, to the extent that we actually see these files released, is a lot of stink on a lot of very powerful people in addition to Donald Trump. And so you begin to see, I think, how the institutions of government are trying to cover for other international institutions of power and corruption. Jeffrey Epstein's ties to Mossad, for example. Jeffrey Epstein's ties to the Russians. Jeffrey Epstein's ties to an international money laundering ring. So I think all of these things will come to be revealed should we actually see this. But I don't know that we actually will see a lot of this, because the very last thing is, you'll remember he pulled 1,000 FBI agents to go over the files and look for the Trump name and Trump references. These files, again, I'm using the word generically, this, stuff has been dry cleaned of Donald Trump's name in any kind of damning way. I'd suggest to you, it's been months. They have taken care of the cleanup job they needed to do on this. These are people at the Justice Department, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi. They will do anything Donald Trump asks. They will cover him to whatever extent necessary. And what your likely to see, to the extent that we'll see anything, is these files dry cleaned of any kind of wrongdoing by Trump. Now, again, there could be reputational harm because he's going to get the Epstein stink on him. But from a wrongdoing situation, I don't know. I think the wrongdoing, in addition, as I said, to the horror that's associated with the victims, et cetera, of this awful predatory sex trafficking ring, I think the revelations are associated with what Sarah Kendzior has written about, which is that these are powerful elites all protecting each other. But believe me, if it were just the elites being covered, Trump, I don't think, would be as dogged in his determination. He's covering his own ass. That's the world he lives in.
I wonder, even if the files have been, gone through and doctored, as you say, if the Epstein estate, where the email batch just came from, if they have all the undoctored evidence, I wonder if it's still intact somewhere.
Yeah. There certainly have been damning releases of information from what you're talking about, the Epstein estate. That's how we know the back and forth. That's how we know the quote from Epstein saying, I've got the goods on Trump. I could ruin him if I wanted to. All of these things come from that. So, yeah, I'm not suggesting there won't be anything damaging. And as I say, potentially reputationally damaging to Trump. It's weird to me that this guy could, be behind the complete undermining of an election, the attempt to overthrow the results of an election, the complete undermining of the Justice Department, the persecution of his political enemies, out in the open, discussing that, the utter grift of this administration, corruption on the highest levels, unprecedented corruption. And you're now seeing, in addition to the $230 million that Donald Trump wants to grab from the Justice Department, the money grabs associated with crypto that were in the first few months of his administration. I don't think many Americans really understand how crypto works, maybe. So that may be the reason that it didn't, produce more of a reaction publicly. But it's a couple of $1 billion that the Trump people have made just in the first few months on the crypto deal, the crypto side. In addition to that, you have the money grab associated with all of those around Trump. Michael Flynn may get a $50 million payout from the government, from you and me. Michael Flynn should have been fired, and his pension from the military should have been stripped from him. This is what a mess and what a horror Michael Flynn was. He was fired from the first Trump administration. Imagine what he had to do to get fired. But that's just one of the ways in which the grift is on full parade. It starts at the top and then it continues on down. And the attempt to cover up what happened on January 6th by now actually allowing January 6th protesters, pardoned as they are, to sue the U.S. government for a wrongful persecution and a wrongful prosecution. And on the persecution side, you have now legislators who are seeking $500,000 apiece. Did you see this? They want $500,000 apiece for their phone records being taken in a dragnet associated with January 6th. And the investigation around January 6th, remember, they were looking to see, who in the Capitol was in touch with legislators from who in that legislative crew inside the Capitol, who was in touch with and getting calls of one sort or another with any of these agitators, Read Proud Boys, the 3%ers, etc. So there were no names. It was this anonymized kind of dragnet of information. But that said, the legislators who show up in that, they now want money just for being part of that investigation, and they are likely to get it.
And it's
but
500,000.
My point in all of that is none of that cuts through. Yeah. What cuts through is Epstein, because sex cuts through. That's what this is about. Predatory sex this pedophilia ring, human trafficking ring, that's what cuts through. So F the democracy, F all this other stuff, F this kleptocracy, F this money grab. What actually cuts through in the people's mind is this sex trafficking ring. So it may be the thing that does him real harm and damage.
We seem to have an issue where your video is freezing. I don't know if it's just for me or if it's for everyone. And then
Tony, is my video freezing?
It kind of came back, so I wasn't going to say anything, but now it seems to kind of be dying again.
Whenever I get in a rant, it freezes.
I mean, my internet went out earlier, so
let me leave and come back a little bit, and then you can, and we'll bring on.
I mean, you look good right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would. It's okay now.
I'd say stay.
If there's an issue,
you reemerge.
Sorry about that, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
All right. Anyway, everyone, hopefully your video is not blurring. And of course, we are an audio presentation as well on iHeart Radio and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So wherever you take us in, if you're on an audio platform, you don't have to worry about my video freezing. You just, as long as the audio is clean, we are good. Anyway.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, this guy is the, and I'll get to, I know, Tony, I had to pull all this video and we haven't run any of it yet. This guy is the political analyst for iHeart Radio and also across the CBS television stations. Our former colleague from KGO Radio has dutifully come over here with us to offer us perspectives on an unprecedented time in American history. How about Gary Dietrich, everybody? Look at you. Nice
well,
to
I
see
guess
you.
maybe dutifully, Mark, but I think your video, I've learned this being in the TV business for decades. Your video is getting stressed out, Mark, when your rants go to a certain decibel level.
Well, it'll be going out a lot then, because this is Rantville, what's happening right now. So, play for Gary Dietrich, the latest media reports on the President of the United States changing his disposition on the Jeffrey Epstein information. Here we go.
For a president known for his unpredictability, Donald Trump's sudden U-turn late last night, urging Republicans to vote to release the Epstein files, shouldn't be a surprise. And yet it is. Posting on Truth Social, the president said it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax perpetuated by Radical Left Lunatics, going on to say, nobody cared about Jeffrey Epstein when he was alive, and if the Democrats had anything, they would have released it before our landslide election victory. Some members of the Republican Party are being used, and we can't let that happen.
Unfortunately, it has all come down to the Epstein files, and that is shocking.
One of the used Republican members he may be referring to is his longtime ally turned critic, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who he has called a traitor.
I believe the country deserves transparency in these files, and I don't believe that rich, powerful people should be protected if they have done anything wrong. And so I'm standing with the women, and I will continue to do my small part to get the files released.
The president has faced pressure from both outside and within the Republican Party. Yesterday, the House Speaker said releasing the files should help put to rest allegations that the president had any connection to Epstein's abuse and trafficking of underage girls.
He had nothing to do with it. President Trump has clean hands. He's not worried about it. I talk to him all the time. He has nothing to do with this. He's frustrated that they're turning it into a political issue, and it's not surprising because the Democrats have nothing else to talk about.
The publication of more than 20,000 pages of Epstein emails just last week has only added more pressure to release the remaining documents. Some of the emails mention the president. In an email sent to Ghislaine Maxwell in 2011, the prolific sex offender Jeffrey Epstein said,
I want you to realize that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned, police chief, etc. I'm 75% there.
The White House claimed the victim reference was prominent Epstein accuser Virginia Giuffre, who has said on numerous occasions that President Trump was not involved in any wrongdoing. In another one of the exchanges published by the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, the journalist Michael Wolff advised Epstein to talk about his connection with Trump before a CNN presidential debate in 2015.
I hear CNN planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in scrum afterwards.
Epstein asks,
if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be?
I think you should let him hang himself.
Wolff replied. In a separate exchange, Epstein told Wolff Trump knew about the girls, though it was not clear what that phrase meant. Donald Trump has denied any wrongdoing and said that he fell out with Epstein years before the disgraced financier's convictions. But Democrats on the House Oversight Committee have said the messages raised serious questions about Donald Trump and his knowledge of Epstein's horrific crimes.
I was 14.
What followed actually is a really powerful clip of the victims saying, I was 14 years old, I was 12 years old, I was 15. It brings home sort of the heinous nature of what was going on under Jeffrey Epstein. But let's first take the Trump reversal. And I'll let you start, Gary. And I had some thoughts also on how this is sort of a reversal publicly, but actually he's working to make sure we don't get information by opening these other investigations into everything. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, first, Mark, I think it's really, really important. I mean, this thing has become so politicized, as you know, for so long. I'm glad you're going to perhaps talk more later in the show about the actual victims themselves. I mean, you know, it probably goes without saying, but I'm going to say it. That's where the focus really needs to be long term. These women, it's just remarkably horrific, the stories, one after another. And these women, many of them still suffering to this day because of the abuse. So I think it's really important to recognize that there are many, some saying as many as hundreds of victims in this thing. So,
but just to interrupt, Gary, I mean, you don't hear Trump talking about the victims. He doesn't. I mean, this is absolutely, it was a hoax.
Mark,
This is Democrat hoax that, he maintains that. So I'm just saying that, go ahead.
I'm trying to depoliticize this moment. Okay. We're going to get to Trump in a moment.
All
but
right.
I'm simply saying, regardless of who is or isn't saying, I frankly don't care, whether their credibility is 0 or 100, the women deserve to be heard. I mean, and that is absolutely unequivocally important. Now, as far as Trump's reversal, this is pure politics 101. It was obvious, the votes, once we got to the middle of last week, and it was clear that there were votes in the House, as you well know, both with the newly seated Democratic congresswoman who put the vote count over the top along with a couple of Republicans. Then it became obvious to Mike Johnson, the vote's going to happen. Let's schedule it as soon as possible. And then secondly, I think it became more and more clear that there's an awful lot, as you know, Mark, of Republican members of Congress who have been under tremendous pressure in the last year to vote to release those Epstein files. And so now that you have the tipping point, the number of members required to actually force the release of the files, now it was widely expected there's going to be, Massey himself, the congressman from Texas, who's kind of been on a Republican charge of this thing, said there could be as many as 100 Republican members of the House that vote in favor of the release. The dam is broken, Mark, is the point. And Johnson realized that. He's a smart vote counter. That's why they're going to hold this vote, it looks like, tomorrow. And that's why last night, kind of 12th hour, I'm sure Trump's advisors told him, look, it's going to be best for you politically and best for our members of the House who have to run next year. They've got to maintain the MAGA base, who, as you know, is big on releasing the files. And in many of these moderate districts, they cannot vote against this. So that's where you are. That's a pretty simple, raw political calculation.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying in the first half hour, that it reminded me a bit of I don't know what the conversation really was. I've now read a bunch of different reporting on it with Joe Biden saying, "Hey, look, we've counted the votes. This is this is how it's going to go down, dude. So you don't want to be part of this anymore." I think I don't think anybody had to have that conversation with Trump that way. But he's so he's keen on which way the wind is blowing. But I wonder if you could just comment on the second part of what I was saying, which is that Trump, by calling for the investigations, and by the way, you'd concede, I think this is something of a watershed moment where the president says, I want you to investigate, Democrats who are connected to Epstein, and then the attorney general, this is the watershed part, goes, yes, sir, we're going to investigate the connection between Democrats and Jeffrey Epstein. So that's the weird, as I say, maybe watershed political part, but I'd also suggest to you that there's something else going on there, which is by opening investigations, they are able to conceal the release of certain information because it's under investigation. Isn't that right?
Well, that's all yet to be sorted out, Mark. I think right now what's become clear is there's not going to be any long-term hiding of this Epstein stuff. I don't care who's spoken about I mean, I don't want to joke and say it could be the Pope, okay? I mean, it's not, all right? But I'm simply saying it could be anybody. I mean, everybody, of course, is waiting for so-called bated breath. Is Clinton going to be mentioned by name, right? Are there other heavyweight political figures? We already know about Prince Andrew and all of that shenanigans going on, you know, with the royals. But what about major CEOs? I mean, there's a lot of people, you know, who've been waiting. Who is actually going to be named in these files? It's going to be a problem for whoever is. I don't care, investigation or not. You know, what we know about this, Mark, and we saw this last week, the Democratic members who released certain emails related to Trump, but there's not going to be any hiding any of this. I mean, so much of it has already been exposed to the committee. There's no doubt going to be leaks. If things are, you know, if people try to put some of this under a rock or under a rug, it's going to come out. And I think that the smart people in Congress have already sort of, you know, counted the odds of this and said, you know what? This dam is already broken maybe a year ago. Just get it all out there now. And also in terms of smart politics, be it Trump, Republicans, or even Democrats, better to do it now, a year before the midterms. You know how this goes. Let this runaway train go for the next 6 months, because you don't want this coming out 30 days before a midterm.
You know, it's funny, Gary, it strikes me as you're speaking, Congress, because you're talking about, you know, are the votes there? And there is so much political calculus associated with, you know, who's up for re-election, who's protecting what seats. The reality is you don't necessarily even need Congress to get these Jeffrey Epstein files or the information around Jeffrey Epstein released from the Justice Department. Bondi could do that, couldn't she?
Well, she could. You know, she's going to feel constrained. You make an important point, Mark. She's going to feel constrained and legally constrained to release things that could be related to charges against a specific individual, right? Not more generally, but if there's somebody named, you know, and there's potential indictments, you know, for some of these people, even the defense attorneys obviously wouldn't want anything released, right? They'd be the first ones to crow and say, wait a minute, you can't just put stuff about my client out there. If you're going to charge them with something into the public domain, let's see it. Let's, you know, put it in an indictment, you know, let a judge decide whether it can be released or not. So that's where things get really sticky in the legal arena. But my basic contention, Mark, is regardless of who is charged or not charged, these documents now have a sort of almost de facto public domain to them. They're going to come out. I mean, whether it's committee staff or whoever that finally makes sure that every one of these pages is released, I truly believe that that's going to happen.
Yeah, we've seen some version of that with what we were talking about, which is the Epstein estate releasing things. So that's a really, really perhaps transcendental point that you're making. I want to ask you about MAGA, and then I'm going to get to Venezuela and I'll let you go. But I want to ask you about MAGA as a movement and where they stand. There seems to be maybe some fractures in what seemed a completely solid revolution that was going on in America and the rise of MAGA. Can you give me a moment on that, where you see them perhaps losing faith in the chief executive, in Trump? MAGA was sort of America first, right? And I know there's been, and again, this might be a little too wonky. I don't know how much of this is filtered down to the MAGA movement. I don't even know what the MAGA movement means. Maybe you can tell me, but I know that it's a coalition big enough to have ascended as they did. But, you know, when you talk about the changing visa programs, for example, that Trump has backed, when you talk about the influx of the Chinese students, it all seems to, in some way, and I know among some MAGA faithfuls, undermine a kind of notion that they have about this is America first and Americans first, Mr. President, and you're selling out that information, the bailout of Argentina. What are you doing with the promise of MAGA? Speak to the movement and where that sits now.
Yeah, well, Mark, you used a word that I think is exceptionally important and many people don't understand about MAGA and is too infrequently mentioned, and that is coalition. You know, people see MAGA as a unified bloc where everybody believes and wants the exact same priorities from the president. That's never the case in a political movement. This is where Barack Obama, for example, found himself struggling when he was dealing with things like Guantanamo. And people were like, wait a minute, what are you doing about that? That's not what right? I mean, there's always over time in a political movement, people say, that's not what I thought MAGA was, or this is what MAGA should be. And we're seeing the cracks in the armor, if you will, the chinks in the armor, the cracks in the wall about the MAGA movement. Because to your point, Mark, these things sort of chip away, right? For some people, the Epstein files have been everything, right? That is the litmus test. But for others, it's, look, we don't want to support fill in the blank, right? We don't want to give way to China on anything. We don't necessarily want to be part of any coalition in the Middle East, right? It's basically us and Israel or the highway. I mean, you could go down a long list of things where, MAGA people say it's the priority, but not all of them. And so the president is dealing with some of that. And some of what we're seeing now is, and people are citing this reversal on Epstein as, this is the first time this president has been forced by his base and forced by members of Congress. Witness Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, who'd have thunk a year ago that she would be a superstar on CNN right now because of her standing up, absolutely straight as a rail against the president. So we're seeing, Mark, the bottom line is we're seeing chinks in the armor. We're seeing some of the coalition being chipped away. And so for the long term, what does it mean? Who knows? I mean, by the time we get to a reelect for a JD Vance in terms of the presidency, maybe in 28, MAGA could look substantially different and not nearly as unified as it does now.
Yeah, in that spirit, Tony, will you play for Gary Trump getting off the plane last night from Mar-a-Lago? He doesn't want to hang on the weekend at the White House because all that construction's going on. I want you to hear a little bit of him talking about, and this segues into the last thing I wanted to ask you about, which is Venezuela. He talks about Marjorie Taylor Greene. He calls her Marjorie Trader Greene now. Tony, are you still? Yeah. And then and then he gets into Venezuela, and then I want to comment on Venezuela. Go ahead, Tony, please.
I talk to anybody. We'll see what happens.
Greene says her life could be in danger because of the rhetoric.
Her life is in danger? Who's that?
Marjorie Taylor Greene, she says.
Marjorie Trader Greene. I don't think her life is in danger. Frankly, I don't think anybody cares about her. Okay, what about you?
Are you negotiating with lawmakers on health care ahead of a vote next month?
We're negotiating with lawmakers, and I've had personal talks with some Democrats. I can't tell you who they are. I just don't want to do that. It's not fair to them. About paying large amounts of dollars back to the people. This was my idea. It came up during that. Oftentimes under times of stress, like the shutdown, you come up with great ideas that you wouldn't have thought of before. The insurance companies are making a fortune. Their stock is up over 1,000% over a short period of time. They are taking in hundreds of billions of dollars, and they're not really putting it back, certainly not like they should. So when I see this, and when I've seen this over the last pretty short period of time, I said, why do we just pay this money directly to the people of our country and let them buy their own health insurance? And I made that statement, and I made it a little bit cavalierly, but it sounded good. And everybody has picked it up, including Democrats. And I am talking to some Democrats right now about doing that. People love it. We're going to take the money, well, if it gets approved, we're going to take the money, we're going to pay it back to the people of our country to go out and buy health insurance. Now, they can put it in a health account. We can do it a lot of different ways. But they buy their own health insurance. They can negotiate price. And it's going to be locked, so they can't go out and buy a Cadillac. They can go out and buy health insurance.
Okay, that wasn't Venezuela, but it does get me to, in my judgment, that was just a bucket of stream of consciousness. I'm struggling because I'm being polite right now, but it's an utterly ridiculous word salad that was going on there. Oh, and to be, again, I don't mean to be disrespectful, especially to you or a distinguished political commentator. So what I mean by that is he, on one level, if you really try to kind of decode it, was talking about the same thing that Obama had done with the Affordable Care Act. That is a negotiation, right, that you have with these insurance companies in this marketplace. He was also right. Trump is correct when he talks about the fact that I mentioned this on the show many times, that the huge scandal among the other scandals with healthcare is that there are the insurance companies that are just middlemen to everything that you're getting. So that's the reason this system is so broken and so very expensive. But there, during his comments, he said, so we're going to give you this money so that you can, pay the insurance companies. Well, the insurance companies are the problem, dude. You just said the insurance companies were the issue. So you can see how tough it is to really come up with any kind of revolutionary change in the way there can be an institutional change in American healthcare. So there was a lot going on there. Comment on that, and then Venezuela. And then I'll ask you about Venezuela.
Yeah, I'll do real quick out of that. First, I'll do insurance and a real quick comment about Marjorie Taylor Greene. So the insurance thing is really interesting to me because here's a Republican president that, famously in his first part of his second term, he was taking on big pharmas, in a big way, at least rhetorically, and now insurance. I mean, this is one of the most interesting components of Trump to people who have, watched politics more broadly, is that you could have, some of that rhetoric you just heard from him could come out of Bernie Sanders' mouth, right? And that is the remarkable thing about Trump, is that his populist instincts when it comes to politics sometimes bleed over way out of a traditional Republican lane into things. Imagine him standing at a podium with Bernie and who knows, Elizabeth Warren stuff, saying, yeah, we're going to stick it to the insurance companies. We're going this route. It might happen. Let's see where this thing goes. So as far as Marjorie Taylor Greene goes, this is a really interesting one to me because now it's all of a sudden a Republican ally enemy. Trump is pretty wily this way. And he realizes he's taken some hits from his MAGA base, but he may have more to gain in some purple districts by taking on one of the lightning rods of the MAGA movement, in the long term. We'll see where that goes as well.
The movement of major military hardware off the coast of Venezuela, the conversations around Venezuela, and the idea somehow that Venezuela is this key piece of some narcotics trafficking international ring that continues to plague the U.S. It's a different flex for Donald Trump. It's a dangerous flex, in my judgment. I think in relation to what we were talking about, the MAGA base, they can't be happy that this peace president is now, again, beginning to move the chess pieces in place to attack Venezuela with some kind of land action. But even before you get to that, having blown away all of these boats, some of them were not narcotics related. I was reading a long account today about families looking for their, demanding actually retribution of some kind of justice from the U.S. because they've killed the head of the family, the father of the family, who was a fisherman. So point, though, let's take that out. MAGA can't be happy with that, but I'm wondering more to the point how you see Venezuela and this president acting in Venezuela, and whether or not it could literally just be moving this hardware offshore as a kind of saber rattling and nothing actually moves beyond that.
Yeah, well, there is a larger geopolitical, you could say, very covert almost, battle going on for the Americas, and that is China's move into South America. And this is something you may have heard about this in the last week, Mark. This is something that I think almost universally every American president has drawn a line, not in the sand, but in the oceans around the Americas, right? And there's been this notion, it goes way back to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Look, nobody is going to mess with the Americas. That's our part of the world, right? Our part of the hemisphere. And so this has a long presidential tradition, of like, look, nobody's going to mess around with us. And so part of it is drug related. I have no doubt about that. Do you need to send the biggest aircraft carrier, the biggest warship in the world? Every defense expert says, look, come on. Venezuela, yes, they have a military. Yes, it's been upgraded. They have a mishmash of actually former Soviet era fighters, a few American ones. They've got so there's not any real, how do we say this, military challenge to dealing with Venezuela. That's not what it's about. If there was any conflict, it would end very shortly with American military might just overwhelming the Venezuelans. There's also very clearly no appetite in the Pentagon, no appetite in Congress for putting American boots on the ground in Venezuela.
Well, a general resigned, just to your point. A general resigned over this.
I don't think anybody has any sense that that is really going to go anywhere. Even now, there's people really raising questions about even any kind of an airstrike inside Venezuela. So bottom line, Mark, to your point, I see this more as Trump just saying, look, if anybody thinks either as a nation state down there or certainly as China, that you're going to start messing with, with anything within 1,000 miles, 2,000 miles of our coastline, that's not going to happen.
I see. So this is a message that you're seeing him sending. Is that what I see in the gate, Tony? Is that Trump talking about Venezuela? Or, let's just watch a second of it. Then I have a theory to run past you on this, so I want to get your thought. Go ahead.
The U.S. with Venezuela, or is all our action still?
Yeah, we have great support because it's all about drugs. Well, in Venezuela's case, it's about drugs, and it's also about thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that they've released into our country. And some are gang members from Tren de Aragua. Some are many are drug dealers. Some are murderers. So in the case of Venezuela, it's the prison population. Their almost entire prison population was released into the United States. You know what that means? Their prison population was released into the United States. And we're getting it out. We're doing an amazing job. We have a strong border now. We have everything. Our country's doing so well.
Okay, so that is kind of I feel like that's a version of him playing the hits, like, they released all of these nasty people into our country. So anyway, that was a bit of Trump, and you've made it clear what you think may be underlying all of this. Let me just try one last theory on you, and just stay with me. Regime change in Venezuela is what the Americans really want, okay, is the way the theory would go. And what's in Venezuela that the Americans want? It ain't stopping the narcotics trade, it's oil. And that this is about a regime friendly toward the Americans, such that the Americans have a connection now to the oil. Can you speak to that theory?
Yeah, well, look, Venezuela is seen as, the major oil pipeline from South America. And they have vast resources. Why do you think, Xi has been cozying up to Venezuela? Okay. It's not because he just can't wait to have a vacation on the northern coast of South America. Venezuela is a major power player in this hemisphere in the South. And, both superpowers are well aware of that. When Trump starts banging the drum again about immigration, that is something that, as you know, Mark, does resonate with the MAGA base. So that could bolster his support from his base dealing with Venezuela. It's much like the Middle East when it comes to the oil thing, Mark. People always say, when you talk about the Middle East, insert as a middle name oil. Middle Oil East, right? I mean, that for decades, that's been the trope related to the Middle East. But increasingly, the reserves in places like Mexico and Venezuela, the whole energy production capacity possibilities in South America, to some degree, Brazil. We don't have time to get into it today, but Gavin Newsom touring Brazil, many of the rainforests down there have been negatively affected by oil production in Brazil, in the Amazon. So this has become more widely thought of as a potential energy partner or resource. We always look to the Middle East, but not exclusively anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest oil reserves are in Saudi Arabia and Venezuela. So that just lets you know. Yeah, sorry, but against that backdrop, all of this is going on. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
Right.
Gary, out of time. Thank you so much. You're always generous with your time. Thanks for joining us on Mondays. Appreciate you being here, my friend.
Of course, Mark, have a fantastic show, buddy.
Gary Dietrich, everybody. And Gary Dietrich's segment is brought to you by Bill Campbell at RE/MAX Gold. If you're relocating into or from Northern California, you need a highly respected real estate professional. Bill Campbell is your guy. RE/MAX Gold is your place. Call or text him. You can text him at 530-448-7474. Call or text Bill, 530-448-7474. It's Bill Campbell at RE/MAX Gold. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I am delighted to segue as a true professional that I am, from one conversation to another. Before I do, I ask you and implore you to smash the like button.
Smash
it's a
it
weird
with
thing.
your iron rod.
In the world of YouTube, we came over from an award-winning radio show, you know, and we didn't have to do this stuff where we say, you know, smash it like a boss. But now we're on a YouTube show where the algorithm actually responds to it. Tony explained it to me one day. We need the thumbs up, and then you get served in different feeds than you normally would be featured in.
Smash it with your iron rod.
That's another way to put it. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate your support.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This person is a best-selling author. I could talk to her every day. She cannot get enough daylight on the revelations that come out of her books. And wow, this moment in Epstein history and political American history and international history, it conforms perfectly with stuff she was talking about in one of her books that came out 5 years ago. She is just brilliant, and she joins us on Mondays. How about it for Sarah Kendzior, everyone? Thank you for being here, Sarah. You know I'm a huge fan, so it's always a treat for me to speak with you.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I want to talk about Hiding in Plain Sight, which was one of your books. And you talk about Epstein there, but it seems as though what's happening now truly overlays what you were talking about in that book in a almost block by block, molecule by molecule way. When you talk about the institutions of power, you talk about the elites. It's way beyond a Trump-Epstein connection. It is so remarkably encompassing of these strata of society that are so very high. Can you spend a beat or two on that here and give folks a sense of that?
Yeah, I mean, this is why the book that I wrote after Hiding in Plain Sight was called They Knew, because they knew all of this crime, all of this abuse, all of this espionage, all of this elite criminal impunity. They knew this the whole time. And obviously anybody with a library card could have taken out my book and read today's news 5 years ago. So while that's frustrating for me, the people who it's worst for are the people who were abused by Epstein and Maxwell and their operation, the victims who have been trying to tell their story, for well over a decade, one of whom tried to tell it a week before the 2016 election, only to receive violent death threats. Her lawyer did as well. So they canceled a press conference. But, these women have been speaking out for an extremely long time. When Epstein allegedly died in 2019, there was this sort of outpouring of revelations about what he and Maxwell had been doing, about all of these elite actors implicated, including, royalty, politicians, academics, people in the entertainment industry, and so forth. And at that point, I actually had a little bit of hope that we might see justice, that we might see more rigorous investigations, and these perpetrators would be taken down. I think a couple things happened. One was COVID arrived right after that, and kind of there was no other story but that. And then also, the Biden administration had no interest in pursuing any of these allegations because it's not a partisan issue. It never, ever was. It is both parties, and it is the most wealthy and powerful men in the world. And so they obviously have a great deal of control over this story and always have.
Well, in fact, in They Knew, you talk about how Epstein was preceded by a bunch of others and the institutions, if you will, that protected from scandal. It's not just all at Epstein's feet.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like their story is much bigger than what I've been able to dig up. What I talked about and They Knew was mostly a man named Craig Spence, who operated during the 1980s, during the Reagan administration. He seemed to have contacts with, George Bush, the vice president then, and others. He was running a trafficking and blackmail operation with a lot of the same tactics that Epstein had. He'd have these fancy parties. He would have underage, boys and girls that he, kidnapped. I'm not going to beat around this, so that they could be raped and abused by the powerful. Then it seems like he blackmailed these powerful figures, and then he died very mysteriously in an alleged suicide with this strange note made out to a chief. And that was after he was finally beginning to be seriously investigated and indicted for his crimes. And Congress is beginning to look at those crimes. And also paralleling Epstein, he used to be portrayed as a mysterious financier, a socialite, a center of the DC, high power social scene, same way as Epstein does, with his criminality completely played down. And then, like Epstein, he dies in this mysterious way, and suddenly all talk of him just ceases, because back then it was print media, and if you simply stopped printing the story would die out. With Epstein, it was different. They used to just cut stories in that way. Now they have to drown them out with noise, with rumors, making it inscrutable, making it impossible to discern what's actually happening. And we went from having demands that were unmet for information to having an enormous amount of information come out very suddenly, all of these emails, and with more to come. I think that is a tactic that is meant to confuse people, meant to make people make memes instead of demand justice, and maybe even get so fed up and repulsed by the story that they abandon pursuit of the truth and of justice altogether.
That last point you make is so powerful, and you write about this. You write about sort of the disinformation machine and how even QAnon becomes part of this noise, and so that the facts and the essence of what's going on gets obscured by all of this other stuff.
Yeah, and they knew. I wrote about QAnon, and I stood up for QAnon, and and I don't regret that. I stood up for the people in QAnon who were telling the truth about Epstein and Maxwell when the press would not, when Congress would not, because that was the problem with QAnon, is that they were members of it, people who aligned with it, were absolutely right about this story. And I would sometimes hear from people in that group who read my books, and then they would abandon Trump because they realized that there is a rape case involving Epstein and Trump, and they had no idea, because the press hadn't covered it. The unfortunate thing about QAnon is that they also believed a lot of things that were preposterous, untrue, libelous, smears, all sorts of irresponsible claims. So you had a very important actual conspiracy drowning in all of these lies and innuendo. And I felt bad for a lot of folks who attached themselves to that movement, because I think some of them were drawn to it out of genuine concern for the welfare of children. And I know there's probably people rolling their eyes as they say this, but I talked to them, and not everybody was some sort of giant Trump fan or in a partisan cause. They really wanted children to not be abused, and that's something I think almost all Americans have in common, except for, of course, the Americans in our government and in our powerful corporate classes, which is a very frightening thing.
And I'm going to get to kind of where we are in this moment politically and with the information coming out in just a second. But I just want to follow up, because the QAnon thing I think is intriguing, because what you've just said essentially is that the conspiracy culture obscures and you write about this, this conspiracy culture obscures, unfortunately, some of the real bald-faced facts associated with this. So the essence of this, again, the facts are obscured by all this stuff that becomes distraction in this conspiracy culture.
Yes, and I think the clearest case of this was, so-called Pizzagate. There was beginning to be a lot of demands for more information about Epstein's relationship with Trump and with Bill Clinton around the time of the 2016 election. And shortly after that comes Pizzagate, which is a lie. It's this false claim that Hillary Clinton was running a pedophile operation out of a basement of a pizza parlor. And what happened was, because so few Americans knew about Epstein, when they would hear this, when they would hear that there was this decades-long operation of blackmailing, the wealthiest and powerful men in the world who were raping children, they thought it must be a lie, because clearly, if this was true, somebody would have done something about it. They didn't understand that the government and governmental institutions were, in fact, compromised in protecting it. But a lot of times when I would bring up Epstein, people would say, that sounds like Pizzagate. Like that's Pizzagate kind of nonsense. And, they'd associate it, Pizzagate, with like Alex Jones and all these figures who have a reputation for lying and for propaganda. And I think that there's an element in the media who is so obsessed with seeming respectable, with seeming refined, that they didn't even want to delve into these stories, even though what was at the heart of them was abused children and also national security. And these are two things that everyone should be concerned with and not afraid to investigate. But they thought it was beneath them. And I think that whoever designed Pizzagate as a propaganda strategy, and they knew, I call it preemptive narrative inversion, getting ahead of the Epstein story before it breaks into the mainstream, so that that's the first thing that comes to people's minds if they've never heard about it. Whoever did that, really understood how the DC and New York-based press operated.
Yeah, this is so very much of the moment, because now it looks as though there will be stuff coming out. Stuff's coming out from the estate. We have emails from Epstein. You have the Michael Wolff statements that have taken on a little altitude. The idea somehow that you need to manage the narrative becomes super relevant. And you speak of this, and really, I think you're kind of a student of this in a way that links it to institutions of media, institutions of government, and I wonder if you could just speak to that. And institutions, not formally an institution, but the institution, if you will, of public consciousness, I wonder if you could just speak to sort of that.
Well, I think it's very interesting that Epstein, which is a case many of us have been demanding answers about for a decade, is suddenly being examined by Congress with all of this information released, when a few things have happened. Like basically all of our institutions have collapsed. The institution of Congress has, the DOJ is essentially a worthless entity that is just, Trump's stormtroopers. And before that, you had the useless Merrick Garland. The media has been drained. A lot of the websites where I initially learned about Epstein and Maxwell are gone. Their archives are gone. Things are paywalled. And most crucially, AI has been introduced. So my suspicion about what the most damning information and evidence is regarding Epstein has always been not that it is texts or emails, but that it is probably video. And I think we're at the point now where if video that is very damning and very disturbing is released, the first reaction is going to be, is this AI? Is this a real thing? Whereas just 2 years ago, certainly 5 or 10 years ago, it would have been impossible for a regular person without technological expertise to create a realistic looking fake video. Now it's very easy and anyone can do it. And so that takes away the ability to not create a narrative, but simply to present the truth and have people understand what happened. It allows for a lot of fakes, a lot of confusion, a kind of, terminal doubt. And I do worry that that's going to affect, the understanding of this case and also who needs to be held responsible.
And so cluttering the scene with some of this, everything from it's fake news, running down the media institutions was something that Trump has been doing for a long time. Now, ultimately now there's been sort of media capture, I'd suggest, by the institutions that you write about. The wealthy, the elite, they are being granted essentially entrance into this media sphere in a way that is unprecedented, although the scene was set for that control. And you write about this, for decades, right? The slow takeover of media by a handful of powerful people and by the elite. I mean, it's funny, Sarah, that Trump is this guy who rode in on a wave of populism. He kind of quacks this populist message, but it's the billionaires' boys club, and he's allowing sort of a sacking of the Treasury. It leads with him to $230 million money grab for the aggrieved party that is Trump, having been persecuted by the Justice Department during his 4 years away. And now people like Michael Flynn getting $50 million. I mean, that's the negotiation. Michael Flynn, this guy should have absolutely no place. I believe he should have been stripped of his military pension. And here he is, he's going to get $50 million from you and me, and that's just part of it. Now there are legislators who are part of that J6 investigation. Their information was anonymized, okay? They didn't even have their names attached to it, just phone phone numbers to see if there was a call coming from literally inside the house to some of these people who were marauding the Capitol on January 6th. So all of these things happened. They are suing now. They want $500,000 apiece. There is this incredible money grab. I guess what I'm saying is that these institutions, all of them, from media to government, they are completely taken over by this jihad that's going on right now.
Yes. And this was the obvious thing that was going to happen if the Biden DOJ and Congress did not act during the 4 years that they had to. It was very obvious that Trump was going to come back and that he was going to do exactly this. And the same is true of his cohort. You know, you could tell that because he pardoned them all at the end, like they were getting set for a sequel. And with the sequel, it is no holds barred. And, you know, that's why it was so urgent and so important for Biden and Congress and Merrick Garland and the rest to act within that, you know, narrow window of time where the whole country was unified on the criminality of Trump. I mean, Trump is a career mobster associate. You know, that's what he did his whole life. He played a tycoon on a reality show, but you know, he's associated with criminals and also criminal attorneys, people like Roy Cohn, for his entire life. And he was never part of like a, you know, kind of ground up populist movement. He was the type designed by publicists, by places like Rubenstein PR, you know, by people like Peggy Siegel. You know, these are also the same people who managed Jeffrey Epstein and Jared Kushner and Rupert Murdoch and all of these other individuals. It is all, you know, basically one group. You know, when I was writing Hiding in Plain Sight, there were people who I wanted to mention who are in this that, you know, I had a very strict legal vetting that I was kind of advised, you know, don't put them in because they're going to sue. But, you know, I thought it was very interesting that, you know, one of Trump's publicists at Rubenstein was Maggie Haberman from the New York Times, the prime person covering Trump. You know, her mother was handling Trump's publicity. And I was just thinking, well, that's an obvious conflict of interest. She's also handling Kushner's. There's this very kind of incestuous group of politics, media, and the New York FBI that, you know, worked in tandem to protect a lot of extremely shady and corrupt individuals, including Trump, Epstein, Giuliani. I mean, the list is quite long. And, you know, one of the things I think that's most damning is not just that there are so many perpetrators, but that there were so many witnesses. That's the problem. That's why Congress never wanted to deal with this, because no matter what administration you're dealing with, whether it's Biden, Trump, Bush, Obama, they all knew about Epstein at the least, even if they weren't part of it. They knew about it and they let it happen. And, you know, they did nothing, and they did nothing to help the victims. They just sealed the cases and continued to make monetary deals with Epstein and his cohort, you know, in many instances. And that, I mean, to do that after the indictments, like there's no possible excuse for that. And, you know, I hope that that is emphasized in the weeks to come, that level of complicity.
There is a sense that the narrative is becoming less controllable. So like the last thing you say there, where you say, I hope it comes out. I think our notion as to what will come out is a tough one to nail down. And that's a good thing. I see more and more of this now as just kind of taking flight on its own. And and even you can see Trump with his reversal realized I can't hold the dam back anymore. There are cracks in my MAGA coalition. I'm seeing the people, and I'm even seeing politically the people turning on me. I'm going to have to allow for this momentum to continue. And so he's doing stuff like, which is, you know, devilishly clever. I'm going to open up an investigation into Democrats. I'm going to have my Justice Department open up an investigation, even though he called it a Democratic hoax, or he called it a Democrat hoax. And in so doing, there'll be parts of this information that can't legally be released by my Justice Department because of an investigation going on. But still, Sarah, there is so much coming out from the estate, et cetera. It doesn't seem as though the narrative is truly controllable from anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's basically true. It reminds me, though, of 2019 in this regard, of August 2019, you know, when there was such a domination of Epstein in the news, and then it kind of came to a halt. I mean, I think public interest is extremely high. I think it's much wider than it was before. This has always been an issue that all Americans were united on. You know, there wasn't anyone rooting for Epstein and Maxwell versus others. If you knew about it, you know, you were on the side of the abused, you were on the side of the victims. And I wrote, and they knew that, it really says a lot about America that this is what's holding us together as a country. But what it comes down to really is, who wields power, and who wields power now is Trump. And there has been very little effort from the Democrats or from the courts or from anyone to go up against him in a meaningful way, in part because he threatens to kill people who go against him. He has a whole cohort of goons, and also people who, they threaten excessive litigation. They attempt to ruin your life. But still, like, this is a known entity. This is someone who was first investigated by the DOJ in 1973. Like, they've had over half a century to get this done. Epstein was a known entity as well. And, the connections, one thing I find very interesting is that every administration seems to have several people directly connected to Epstein in a very personal way in there. You had Bill Barr, whose father hired Epstein as a high school teacher and brought him into New York high society. You had Tony Blinken, who was raised by Robert Maxwell's best friend, and also the last person who saw Robert Maxwell died, Robert Maxwell being Ghislaine Maxwell's father, and also someone who was originally, part of this transnational crime operation. Like, it's a very odd thing to me that he becomes Secretary of State under Biden, like, of all people. And, you had Alex Acosta also as the labor secretary under Trump. I mean, I could just go on and find Epstein connected people. Like, you could do 6 degrees of Epstein and it's like, the guy down the hall. Like, you don't have to look very far. And that's a disturbing thing. And I think that they purposely chose those individuals because they knew those people would never investigate Epstein, because it would mean investigating their own family members, their friends, their professional and social circles. Like, that was how they controlled this story.
Yeah, and it's not all, as you've said, the sex part. It's the connections to all the other stuff associated with Epstein. Tony, play me a little bit of the victims just for a second. I feel like I don't want to have a conversation about this without this. I thought this is powerful. This is a spot that came out, and here's just a clip from it, and you realize how young these people are.
14 years old. I was 16 years old.
I was 16.
17.
14 years old.
Beyond the politics are Epstein's victims, still seeking some form of justice. Last night, some of them released this video urging lawmakers to vote to release the files. Donald Trump has weathered many political storms before, but this is a story that won't go away. In giving the green light to release the files, he's hoping it finally will. But that, of course, depends on whether the files are quite as boring as he claims.
There is quite a bit of there's quite a bit of information that's already been released, as we've seen, and it's pretty damning. But wow, the international network that you describe in some of your writings, that's the connective tissue that I feel still has to be exposed.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's a network that spans many countries, the foremost countries. It's, the US, the UK, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. And I think it's particularly interesting that, some have been surprised about the Republicans, the few of them that have demanded that the Epstein information be fully released. They're the same Republicans that are not taking money from AIPAC, because Israel is really the elephant in the room. It's, a primary funder of Congress through AIPAC. They wield an enormous amount of influence. And, Epstein was closely working with Israel. And of course, Robert Maxwell was an operative for Israel. He had a grand state funeral after he died, after mysteriously falling off a yacht in 1991. And, they were thanking him for his service to the country. And this is a career criminal. He was a publishing magnate, but he was associated with, the Russian mafia. He was, up to all sorts of, dirty deeds. And this was known at the time. And so that's the issue. When someone talks about Robert Maxwell and they bring him into this conversation, I tend to think they're an honest broker in discussing Epstein. If they're leaving that whole history out, a history that really seems to stem from Iran-Contra and the circle surrounding Iran-Contra more than anything else, then I tend to think they're not particularly serious about this, because you see arms traders, people like Adnan Khashoggi, this kind of rotating series of characters. And then you see, of course, people who were murdered later, like Jamal Khashoggi. It's the same names, the same countries, and they're showing up again and again. And that's why I do feel like there are a lot of different levels to this story. But when you're seeing so many familiar places, like another example would be Deutsche Bank, being a financial entity used over and over, then you need to examine that trail. And there's so much of this that there's no way it could all be in one book, or one investigation. But it's been buried for so long, and that's the result. But I think that trying to put those puzzle pieces together and figuring out who really controls the US government and who even controls this criminal operation, because I don't think Epstein was the head of it. I think he was a major figure within it, but I don't necessarily think he's the person running it. And I wonder a lot about Russian mafia operations, like the one by Semyon Mogilevich, which is basically never brought up, even though that is, who Robert Maxwell was working with. And also a number of people who worked for Mogilevich ended up working side by side with Trump through Bayrock and through other organizations. So that's all something that should be covered. But basically,
well, I mean, and the money trail does go back to Russia in addition to other places, and the capture of major banking institutions through whatever way Epstein had. Was it blackmail or whatever? But they're huge banking executives, as you know, are brought down in the scandal as well. So yeah, there's way more to be told here, but I'd suggest it was foretold in some measure, and it was laid bare in a couple of your books, and we'll have links to them under this conversation as always. I'm out of time really, but I didn't want the entire conversation to go away without touching on what I think is a huge winner politically. Should there ever be another real election in America, should there ever really be another shot at a change of power, and that is corruption. I alluded to it earlier in this conversation in relation to the power grab on the part of Donald Trump, the $230 million, the $50 million from Flynn. I thought it particularly grotesque when I saw the Swiss who were trying to get out from under these withering tariffs that Donald Trump, again, impulsively imposed upon the Swiss. They brought him, in the conversation and negotiation with them, they brought him a gold bar with, I think it was inscribed, maybe with his name, I forget. I think it did have his name on it. There was, literal graft and grift going on in the White House. And then the president removes the tariff from the Swiss, the heavy tariff, so it's back down to 15% or whatever it was, off of the 40% it was prior to the conversation. The total corruption of this administration on every level, from the Argentina bailout, which is associated with Besant and the Billionaire Boys Club, hedge funders who were buying in Argentina and needed to prop up that government, to, as I say, the graft and grift associated with this Swiss gift. Give me a moment on this. I feel like more should be made of this. Somehow it's getting lost in the smoke.
Yeah, I never understood why the Democrats didn't. Well, I did understand, I guess, but the Democrats should have ran as an anti-corruption party first and foremost, and they couldn't because they themselves are corrupt. That is why they are taking dirty money, dark money, money from sanctioned Russian oligarchs that are then given to proxies to make it legal to deposit it into campaigns, dirty money from Silicon Valley. But, this is a kleptocracy. America is a kleptocracy, and that means ruled by thieves. And that is something that Americans, regardless of their political party, they will not put up with. Nobody wants to be ruled by thieves. They'll allow bigotry. They'll allow just being a jackass. Like all sorts of things can get by. No one wants to be stolen from. No one wants to be ripped off. No one wants to see the treasury looted. No one wants to see disgusting child raping oligarchs being rewarded. So yeah, this is a very unifying thing. But the problem is there are very few in Congress who kind of live up to their word, have a sincere interest in protecting the American people from this. One final note, there's a very interesting speech by, of all people, Robert Mueller, called The Evolving Organized Crime Threat, where he talked about organized crime and kleptocracy as what was most likely to bring America down. And he gave this speech in 2011 and then proceeded to do basically nothing to stop it. But his point is that high level elite kleptocracy affects the average American person. It affects how much things cost. It affects affects your ability to just, live your life unimpeded. So it's not an abstract issue. It is what the Democrats like to call a kitchen table issue. So their avoidance of it for so long under that excuse is just facetious. I mean, that is not a legitimate reason to ignore elite, billionaire corruption.
The only person I heard on the Democratic side, this is back in 2015, and I was so excited that she was talking about this, and I really felt like we had a chance with this conversation. The only person I saw and heard mention corruption was Elizabeth Warren.
Yes.
She mentioned it prominently. I mean, I would start and end every conversation with corruption. This is, but as you say, nobody's got a clean account here, which is the tough part. I mean, everyone's so compromised who may be blowing the whistle on corruption that, you end up just going with they're all corrupt, the same way you lose track of the facts in all the disinformation. But I'd love to talk to you more about that, maybe for the next time or in a future conversation. Links to all of Sarah's books under this conversation, they're all gifts. And you could almost needle drop them, just open and enjoy. I mean, and enjoy the ride through real facts and wonderful information and stories really well told. Again, super treat to talk to you always. Thank you, Sarah.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Sarah Kendzior, everybody. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'm a huge fan. Again, links to her books, and you'll find what I'm talking about and what she's talking about, which is essentially the superstructure that allows this, the stuff that's happening now, so beautifully foretold by Sarah and detailed by Sarah. So those who are interested in that stuff, as you should be. She's fantastic, says Janie Buck. I agree.
It's fantastic.
That's exactly it. Really, truly fantastic. Yeah. Man from the West, 420 says, love this story. It's incredible. I'm going to sit down and finish my cup of coffee right here. Thank you for the coffee reminder, man. I'll tell you what, I'm flying on some good coffee right now.
Put that coffee down.
I'm sorry. And let me just have a quick sip of the, in my Peacefully Resist mug, which I got at getmarkmerch.com, and I have to buy it just like the rest of you with the Mark Thompson logo tastefully on the back side. So I encourage you, getmarkmerch.com. Mary Lynn, thank you, Tony, for putting it up there. Or Kim, I don't know, whoever's putting it up there. Thank you. This is Tony. Look at that Born to Peacefully Resist shirt. That's the same one I'm wearing right now. Pet approved. Born to Peacefully Resist. I like the black with the green and kind of the earth there at the center. I think it's kind of a cool thing. And the cats looking up. Those are not my cats, but they are a real Mark Thompson Show viewer, listeners' cats. So those are not prop show business cats. Those are real. This is I know with AI, could be anything. Anyway, getmarkmerch.com. It's a t-shirts. We have a cardigan sweater that I will be wearing.
What?
I will be wearing it later this week. There's a lot of fun stuff on there, and Courtney's designing a bunch of it, and so she's really excited about that. She likes to do that kind of thing, I guess.
Like the long sleeve shirts are in as well.
Yes, the long sleeve shirts are in.
Girl, you just woo.
Yeah, it is a real way to make an impression. Thanks for reminding me to smash the like button, says Karen Cooper. Smash it like
with
a
your
boss.
iron rod.
If you like to Sarah Kendzior, you want more conversations like that, you got to let us know. Mark is back. Awesome, says Chaplain Fred. Wow. Or is it AI, Mark? You're pixelating and robotic.
That was earlier, but yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I am self-deporting, says Chaplain Fred, to Cancun this December.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Self-deporting to Cancun is not so bad, Sarah loved a road trip on chapter 3. Well written, says Richard Delamater. Yeah, road trip is great. Last American Road Trip is really great. One of Sarah's books. James Bliss, what is it? $5?
Well, it's $2, but then it says $5, so I don't know.
That's very clever. It's
meant to confuse.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you so much.
He was just figuring it out because here's a $5 from Mr.
Oh,
Bliss.
Getsemani. That is the art district in Cartagena. We're talking, and he says, James does, Get some money. I love Cartagena. And yes, every street vendor selling hats or sunglasses is also selling blow.
What?
It's not a myth, he says. I did not know that.
Thompson, party of four.
I didn't know that there was blow being sold. Never heard is that what people still call it, blow?
I think
In the
so.
Epstein emails, Epstein said that he could take Trump down, says Donna Miracle. It looks like he is doing it from the grave. Maybe. I mean, as you know, I'm skeptical of anything taking down. I mean, he has control of everything, Donald Trump. So tough to imagine a scenario by which anything would take him down, just to be honest. I mean, tell me what institution in America is going to take him down. I mean, I get you that this is so gross. There's evidence that Trump was involved with this age girl or that age girl or knew about it or, I get it. There's evidence that he's corrupt from this standpoint or that standpoint. And we detail it all for you on this show. And I always hear from many of my friends on the left who go, this is the one though, right, dude? Like this, he cannot escape this, right? Well, what do you mean he can't escape it? I mean, are you saying that it hurts him politically? Maybe. He's not in it to be reelected. He's making a fortune. He's in it to enrich himself. I mean, there are parts of this game that are just associated with money. And from that standpoint, these things don't hurt him. He has more and more transactions every day. I just told you about the Swiss. That's just one of them. Did you see the deal he's making with Saudi Arabia? Got a huge deal with Saudi Arabia. He's got a Saudi business person. Now, I'll talk about this tomorrow. I really will. Meeting with him, and it's all about a Trump development deal, a Trump properties in Saudi. And meantime, this Saudi person normally wouldn't even get an audience with the president. They're not an official diplomat. They're not an official office holder in Saudi Arabia. They're just a deal maker. It's a real estate deal. It's a payoff. That's what's going on. So
Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is set to visit the White House tomorrow, as a matter of fact.
There you go. And that's part of it, that very meeting that Kim has just mentioned. And so I mention it because when you talk about, this is the thing that's going to bring Trump down, nothing's going to bring Trump down. Nothing, okay? He controls all the instruments of power. He has the Justice Department. Congress is gone, okay? And I understand, but you see how Congress is asking for an investigation and they're losing steam and he's going to lose the House. Don't get me wrong. These things will exist. But Trump's essential protections are well in place. So I feel we should call all this stuff out. We should call out his corruption, that which we know about. We should call out the overreach associated with his power. There's plenty of that when it comes to ICE, immigration, the horror that is this immigration policy. It is horrifying. It should be called out here. And I'm a voice calling it out, and there are many much, much bigger voices calling it out. But when you talk about, will this be the thing to bring him down, I'd suggest to you he is bulletproof from that standpoint. Depressed Canadian with a $20 super chat says, if Democrats get back in the White House, I worry they will turn the page like Obama did with Bush and Biden did with Trump and not properly prosecute anyone from this administration. Well, the Democrats are famous for that, right? They're the institutionalists. They're the ones that protect the institutions of power. The governmental institutions of power don't want to call Trump out. They don't want to call out Trump's acolytes and functionaries. And now, of course, with presidential immunity, I'd suggest to you that, Trump really is essentially bulletproof. There's not a thing you can offer up legally or in any other way to have him account. Now, and this is what the concern is from Bannon, who articulated it last week, was it? He articulated the worry that he might be, and others might actually go to prison for some of the decisions and actions taken under the Trump administration. That's a real worry because they're not protected by any kind of immunity. But that said, I don't know that the Democrats are reascending to power. Again, all the institutions of power are controlled by Trump. Trump declared an emergency in American cities and nationalized or federalized, I should say, the National Guard. He would think nothing of messing with the elections, in my judgment. Nothing. And in fact, I think they're already beginning that. I mean, this disenfranchisement of voters, we've talked about that. That's a high art in some of these places. The ability to manipulate the next election, I think, lies completely with Trump and his functionaries, and they will exercise that to the max. There is no action that is beneath Trump to protect this base and this political power that has now marshaled all of these institutions in Washington and beyond. And so I would, again, suggest that we need to call this stuff out. But if you're looking for the one thing, the smoking gun, I think he can escape all of it. Even Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, Mark, what do you mean? I mean, there's video of him. Video can be manipulated, AI, it's a Democratic hoax, it's a Democratic controlled, it's George Soros, and then they all fall into line with the talking points. Remember, there's no there. That was the talking point for a long time. The first talking point was we want to get these released. We got to get these released, want them out. Joe Biden, his FBI, his Justice Department, why isn't more being talked about? Why are they concealing it? Then it was, there's no there. We're all in power. Gosh, there's just nothing to report. There's nothing actionable. Now it's whatever it needs to be. Yes, voter fraud already being planned by the GOP. Hawaii legislature is going to consider stopping mail-in voting that was started in 2020 and very successful in increasing the vote, says Karen Cooper. Yeah, I mean, I think that's just one of the things. You're ignoring the power of the voters. Yeah, Gregory says that I'm ignoring the power of the voters. No, Gregory, you're ignoring the power of the counting of the vote. You do have power. We have power. But I'm just suggesting that with recent history as a guide, that power can be undermined by those in power now. MAGA is always going to be the biggest threat to Trump when they fully realize that they've been used and discarded. I mean, Trump is beginning to take on water. So I'm not suggesting that you can't delight in this guy who is completely corrupt and has an agenda that is a brutal, awful agenda. It's brutal and awful for Americans. I mean, I think the ICE raids are grotesque and horrifying on a level I never have seen, where you're throwing people who are really innocents to the ground, zip tying them, kids in Chicago. We showed you that raid in Chicago. They're they're dropping out of those Black Hawk helicopters on those, not zip lines, but, I mean, it was just a show of force. It was a flex down the street from me. The car wash, they raid it. All these guys get out of these, whatever their private cars, it looks like, these SUVs, masked. They're just thugs.
Did you see the video that was put out over the weekend of there's a new ICE crackdown in Charlotte, and this woman had hired some workers to put holiday lights up, and ICE came and was questioning the workers in her yard. We have video of it.
It's great. And she confronts them and kind of chases them away.
Yeah, she runs them and they hop back into their minivan, and she's got pictures of the license plate numbers. Like, I guess maybe because they were on her private property that this was something that she could do. And then she protects the men. I don't know if they were undocumented or what, but she says someone needs to follow them basically to make sure they're safe, that we need to keep filming, that we need to make sure they're all right. What an amazing, I mean, it just shows you that people do have power.
Yeah. It is true that I'm not suggesting we don't have power at all. I'm suggesting when I talk about Trump that you're not going to dislodge him with one moment or one revelatory story, because there have been revelatory story after revelatory story. I mean, the Qatari jet, the grab of $230 million, where all that has to happen is Todd Blanche, his former personal defense attorney, and Pam Bondi have to sign off on him getting $230 million. That's exactly what's going to happen. That because he was reaching a settlement with the U.S. government for investigating him and for prosecuting him for everything from the document case to the other cases they brought against him, or at least had in the pipeline to bring against him. So as the aggrieved party, he picks $230 million, and then he approves that money. This is utter corruption. But as I suggested, these revelations are just, one right after the other. Depressed Canadian says, if, and that is a big if, the Democrats win power, a possible compromise could be to have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to allow some transparency for what has happened in the last decade. Not likely, but an idea. I completely agree, and it may be that that is the only way to at least get the story out. I would also suggest that, sadly, there may be a lot more. You're only in the first year of this guy's presidency. There's going to be a lot more. You want a Truth and Reconciliation? I think you're going to have to, just add all of these things to a stockpile of stories, illegalities, and abridgment of civil rights that we're seeing on a level unprecedented in American history. So, all right, I have but I want to change the mood quickly, and then I'll get to maybe a little news from Kim. But I've got a quick little mood changer for you.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I want you to smash the like button, if you would. Hit the like button for me. It's do it for me. And what the great thing about subscribing to the show, if you subscribe to this show, you share this show, it's free. You increase the show's footprint, but you bring yourself a lifetime of happiness. So if you care about a lifetime of happiness, you will subscribe to the show and share the show. It may be the segment with Sarah Kendzior. Tony beautifully and elegantly puts these segments out, these videos out. We now have special interviews that'll be dropping on the weekend. Share them, subscribe, and enjoy your lifetime of happiness and freedom. Now, I know no one knows it. I'm someone who just saw it, and I'm going to ask you about it. Tony? Kim?
Yes?
Everyone. Napoleon, are you familiar with Napoleon?
Yeah, that would be the dictator, the emperor.
He lost, yes, very good. He lost a hastily fled battle. You may have heard of it. Battle of, anybody?
Waterloo?
It's my, when you're defeated, you go, it's my Napoleon. Waterloo was the answer you wanted. It's my Waterloo.
Waterloo, yeah.
As he fled the Battle of Waterloo, it was 1815. He lost a diamond brooch. That's right.
Nice that you wear that to battle, because you have to, you want a little sparkle as you're on the horse.
You gotta bring the ice. What is it called? Is that what they call it, ice, the kids still anymore or not?
Ice. That's your ice.
Yeah, different kind of ice. So they, as it turns out, this circular jewel made with early 19th century features, a 13-carat oval diamond surrounded by smaller diamonds, just a little something Napoleon slapped on. He wore it as a hat ornament, which is the way to wear that kind of thing. Yeah, there it is. Tony's got a picture for those on YouTube. So, as the French forces fled, their carriages were slowed by muddy roads. The Prussian army captured at least 2 of the carriages that held Napoleon's personal items. Well, Napoleon's captured hat and sword were presented to the Prussian king, Frederick William III. You remember, oh, yes, there it is. And one of the officers took the brooch and indeed presented it to the king 3 days after the battle. Well, that brooch found its way through the many decades to Sotheby's auction. And at Sotheby's auction in Geneva last week, it sold. How much did that jewel go for? How much did Napoleon's brooch drop at the Battle of Waterloo? How much did that go for? I want only legitimate guesses. In dollars, please. U.S. dollars. 20 million, says Champagne Wishes. 50 million, says Jeff Moses. Cousin Earl with 50 million. 26 million, says M. Oak. $500 million, says Nancy V.
That's a lot.
Wow. 1 billion Canadian, says depressed Canadian. C.C. Ryder says 15 million. Napoleon's brooch dropped at Waterloo. It sells at Sotheby auction for $4.4 million, everyone. $4.4 million. Everybody's a little high in their guesses, yeah. But kind of big news. I didn't realize that those historic artifacts could be sold like that, you know?
I didn't realize he was so bejeweled in battle.
Right,
I mean,
he kind of brought the, he brought more than his toiletry kit to the overnight battles.
I know it's different times and everything, but you'd still think you'd want to blend in, not stand out. With your giant 14-karat diamond glistening in the sun on your head.
Yes,
This is
Commander.
an easy shot, isn't it?
I mean, with all respect, maybe as a little over the top with the jewel on the hat. Maybe a little too much. I'm just. All right, Kim will give us a few headlines on the way out here, and we will, and we'll wrap up around here and handle some comments as well. All right, Mark Thompson Show. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Welcome back, Mark Thompson. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. A bill to compel the release of the government's Jeffrey Epstein files is expected to be brought to the House floor tomorrow. President Trump now urging House Republicans to vote for the release. Trump announcing his sudden reversal on Truth Social Sunday, saying there is nothing to hide and that it's time to move on from what he called a quote, Democrat hoax.
Yeah.
If the measure passes, it will go to the Senate, where it faces an uncertain future. Meanwhile, Congressman Thomas Massie is raising concerns about the new probe into Jeffrey Epstein, suggesting the investigation could actually interfere with the effort to bring about the full release of those files.
Yeah, we talked about that on the show today.
Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, as you already mentioned, is set to visit the White House Tuesday for talks with President Trump. The two are expected to discuss a number of issues, from AI chips to nuclear technology to the potential normalization of ties with Israel. Trump also confirmed recently he is considering a possible weapons deal with Saudi Arabia that would send F-35 fighter jets to that kingdom.
And send $1 billion to him personally, probably. I mean, there is no transaction that doesn't have a Trump grift associated with it. This is the grift and graft crew.
Can I get a Saudi Arabia pays cash?
Oh, they do, yeah.
Saudi Arabia pays cash.
That's right. Thank you.
Airlines ramping up the service after the FAA lifted its flight reduction order at airports nationwide just in time for Mark to be home. A reduction in flights at dozens of major airports began a week ago to help address a shortage of air traffic controllers during the government shutdown.
Morning.
Yep.
The acting director of FEMA stepping down. That, according to multiple reports, David Richardson was selected to head the agency following former acting administrator Cam Hamilton's firing in May. President Trump threatening to pull his support from Indiana Republicans opposed to redistricting efforts. The president took to Truth Social saying, "I will be strongly endorsing against any state senator or House member who doesn't support redistricting for congressional seats."
Good day, sir.
Yeah.
Trump has lashed out at Indiana State Senator Gary Good and State Senate President Roderick Bray for opposing the redistricting efforts in that state. His
Trump
way
is
or the
afraid
highway.
of losing the House. I mean, it's true. I think that he wants those additional seats, but not and this is, again, it speaks to what we've been talking about today, not everybody's on board with the Trump plan anymore.
Democratic lawmakers are calling for the Trump administration to immediately stop any plans to sell or transfer responsibility of the government student loan portfolio to the private market. More than 40 Democrats, being led by Senator Elizabeth Warren, issuing a letter warning the sale would amount to a giveaway to wealthy insiders at the expense of working class borrowers and taxpayers. Looks like looking more like President Trump will sit down with New York City Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani. The president said he'll work something out to meet with the Democratic Socialists set to take over as mayor in New York City on January 1st. Trump spent much of the campaign from Mamdani's campaign trading political barbs with the state assemblyman, threatening to withhold any extra federal funds allotted to New York if he won.
Well, I mean, first of all, Trump has a lot of real estate in New York, as everybody is well aware. I also would suggest that, Mamdani is a powerful political figure. He has a Trumpian populist kind of message, only he really believes it. I mean, Trump's just, slinging the crap until he gets in, and then he's going to just
line his own
take
pockets.
everything, line his own, take everything off the wall that he can stuff into his pockets. You know what I mean? He's a total grifter. But
Mark, what about all the gold he's left behind for the American
he leaves
people?
behind the Home Depot gold. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. Anyway, I think it's no surprise that he's talking to Mamdani, I guess what I'm saying.
A judge is ordering the Department of Justice to turn over grand jury materials related to former FBI Director James Comey. The order comes after a U.S. magistrate found that Lindsay Halligan, who President Trump appointed to lead the case, may have made significant legal errors in presenting evidence. According to the judge, the record points to a disturbing pattern of profound investigative missteps that led an FBI agent and prosecutor to potentially undermine the integrity of the grand jury proceeding. Comey is pleading not guilty to charges of making false statements and obstructing a congressional investigation. NBA staffers from numerous teams, including the Lakers, have been asked to turn in their cell phones and other property as part of this illegal gambling investigation. The Athletic reports the NBA hired an outside law firm to conduct an internal review, which includes requesting documents and phones and records from select team employees. According to the report, investigators are expected to request materials from at least 10 Lakers employees after federal charges were filed against Damon Jones, a former NBA player and associate of LeBron James, who worked informally with the team.
I mean, this is, I know Mo Kelly was talking about this because I feel like he knew more about this maybe than I know. But his general disposition, what I got in watching the show last week, was that there's a lot here that we don't know and that's going to come out. That's what Mo seemed to indicate. And he seemed to sort of have a window on it that was pretty solid. So I wouldn't be surprised. Now, this is interesting. One quick comment about the NBA. One of the mini scandals of the NBA, and it's been revealed in conversations with their referees, and one in particular, but in some of these referee-oriented exposés, I'll use that word, they end up talking about the fact that they oftentimes don't call fouls on their stars in the NBA the way they do on some of the other players on the floor that aren't the superstars or stars. And that's a scandal in itself, right? I mean, that affects the outcome, and it means that the stars can get away with more. But you're already talking about, I guess is my point, a league that compromises itself in a way so as to prop up the NBA stars. So I'll be interested to know when you say they've hired this outside firm and they're doing an investigation, whether or not if this firm reveals anything about their stars or even about other players, maybe a large number of players, how much we'll actually find out and what will actually happen. Now, the very last thing I'll say about this is if you're a star in the NBA, in a way, I can't understand why you'd be part of any kind of NBA corruption. You're making millions of dollars. So do you care about somebody who says, hey, I'll give you a couple of $100,000 if you miss a jump shot? I mean, that just seems like it's bad math. I don't understand why you'd sacrifice your $1 jillion contract for a $300,000 payoff from the mob. It just doesn't pencil out. But, the mob can be pretty convincing sometimes. So maybe there's more here than meets the eye.
Well, and once they have you, don't they just they can manipulate you in all different ways. Like you
Sure.
make one misstep and all of a sudden you're in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Department of Health and Human Services is planning to release new dietary guidelines next month. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. shared plans for ending the war on saturated fats in this country, as well as incentivizing the reduction in petroleum-based food dyes and increasing oversight into infant formula. Kennedy says,
say you love your country.
Yeah, this is a country built on, what was the fatty, what was the first part? Fatty?
Saturated fats.
Yeah, saturated fats. I mean, look around, dude. We built this country on that. It's un-American that you would suggest that we get rid of that. Yeah.
You cannot say you love your country.
Exactly. RFK Jr., go home.
Kennedy says the guidelines are going to stress the importance of protein and saturated fats, and he believes it will really revolutionize the food system.
Yeah.
Seriously, what the
Kennedy has pushed for a so-called carnivore diet, which encourages the consumption of only meat, poultry, eggs, seafood, fish, dairy products, and water.
Oh, wow. Well,
That's what America needs.
Yeah, I would say.
He is looking good at his age.
What you are talking about.
Oh, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's you can ride that meat diet right over to a Cedar Sinai hospital where they'll have to, what is it, they rotor your arteries.
Speaking of meat, a 22-year-old man is in critical condition in Greece after attempting to swallow a hamburger whole. The ambitious eater, whose name has not been released, made the attempt during a meal with friends on Thursday and has since been placed on a ventilator. The man reportedly stopped breathing for 2 minutes and his airways were obstructed, leading to severe complications affecting his brain, kidneys, and other organs because he tried to swallow a hamburger whole. Local police are investigating the incident. They're seeking footage from the restaurant to determine if anyone encouraged the man to attempt this stunt.
Who does that diet, Tony, where you're supposed to eat the hamburgers whole? Is that a new kind of diet?
I'm guessing TikTok.
TikTok, yeah, exactly.
Hamburglar. Yeah.
This is social media, both just what that is.
Under the
dumb.
Yeah, under the auspices though of Dr. Emil Schopausen. Emil Schopausen, the third. Yeah, I think he was doing some research.
He's just on the RFK Jr. diet, Mark. I mean, that's
well, it's adjacent too. Yeah.
This report, sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, comparison test. When you're in Colombia drinking Colombian coffee, are you wishing for your Coachella Valley coffee?
I will tell you, I told Courtney this. I said, this is like truly not in the same universe as Coachella Valley coffee. It really isn't. I mean, look, maybe there's some Colombian coffee I didn't taste the right kind or whatever, but I'm telling you, man, this is the best coffee I've ever tasted. I love it, and I love the Clarity blend. But I also like the Ocotillo Espresso, and I love that Sunrise blend. A couple of people have written to me they love the Sunrise blend, so find the blend, find the coffee, the bean that's right for you. There are tasting profiles under every bean. It's all hand-roasted. This is a boutique roastery, so you get the very best coffee, tea, spices. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Anything on their website, load it all up. Teas, coffees, spices, merch, whatever. You get 10% off everything with our discount code MARKT. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Use our discount code MARKT at checkout for 10% off.
Put that coffee down.
All right, okay.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
Right on. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I am wrapping up, and I didn't want to completely leave the show without recognizing the loss of our dear friend Jim Avila, who I loved. He was an amazing journalist. Incredible professional, called out by name during the Obama administration as he covered the White House for close to a decade. He was the senior ABC News correspondent there at ABC. He held so many positions. He was the World News Tonight anchor on weekends. He was on ABC's 2020. You see this picture now of him on the 2020 set. He was a real thing. Like, he was really the guy who knew politics. Okay, there he is with Obama. He really understood so much about journalism too. He was, old school from that standpoint. He actually reported from theaters of war. He wasn't afraid of taking on big stories. He made his name in Chicago and was so terrific in Chicago that he was hired by NBC in Los Angeles and then covered the O.J. Simpson mess that was the chase, the trial, the daily stuff of O.J. Simpson. And the network, ABC, saw his work on that story, saw the way he broke stories, saw the way he covered stories, saw the way he told stories. And they hired him at ABC News to then be this guy who he was. I think that is a shot of him, probably in Los Angeles, just judging from the hair.
Yeah.
He was a reporter's reporter. You oftentimes hear that, but he really was widely respected by so many in the industry and had been sick for a long time and was a big part of our show. As you know, his drop will live on, and it won Mark's Madness.
There's always been in this country 30 to 35% idiots.
You know, and I would challenge Jim because I have a grim view of the American public, and Jim sort of had a sense that was more informed by an optimism about the vote among women, among those who didn't show up in the last election and the numbers that we thought, meaning Jim, thought they might. I was always more skeptical, so we would go back and forth on that. But his reporting from the border, the U.S. border, he moved to San Diego and reported there, heading up the investigative team there in the San Diego area for the ABC station there. They did a great report and obit on him. There have been some great obits. World News Tonight did a big obit on him. The number of the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times, the Chronicle, etc., they wrote about him because he's that big. And it's a weird thing. I'll tell you what I told some friends. Because he's such a dear friend, I lose track of what a big deal he is.
Right?
Know? So,
it's easy to do that and then all of a sudden it's everywhere and you remember, oh yeah, he was a big deal, right?
Exactly. So so sad. He battled kidney disease. He got a kidney transplant from his brother Jay, and he seemed to be doing well for a while, and then it's just been a sad erosion of his health. And I went and visited him not that long ago, and we were so lucky that he came onto the show on Fridays the way he did. And it was tough to see him diminished, but I think he went out the way he wanted to go. And I know him through mutual friends. That's a good question. How do I know him? I know him through Josh Mankiewicz, I think who was my friend growing up in Washington, D.C. And I think I met Jim originally that way. So I've known him for, decades, but probably that was the way I know him.
You
Truly,
guys had such a great friendship, and it felt like, because when he was on this show with you, it felt like we were all in on it, and we became friends with you guys.
Yeah. Really a wonderful guy with reporter chops that were just unreal. So Debbie says, I had a crush on Jim. I felt so honored when he took my question on a meetup and tried to talk me, quote, off the ledge. He seemed like just a regular guy. Yeah, he came to our meetups. I forgot. In fact, we have another meetup coming. Did I? I'll get to that in a second. I didn't mention it, but he was great to come to the meetups. Was never compensated for this. He would always remind me of that. And I'll miss him desperately. So Jim Avila. I so enjoyed Avila on the show. Always look forward to hearing him here, says Rain. Yeah, there he is with his mama. His mom, just a wonderful lady as well. So thank you, Jim Avila. Gone way, way, way too soon.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There's always been in this country 30 to 35% idiots.
Yeah, it's true. Those numbers may have to be revised, come to think of it. Let me get into a couple of comments on the way out, but I did want to mention this. For those who have hung out on the show this long, you need to know this. There is a meetup planned. It is our big holiday hoedown. This is a live off-air event, December 1st at 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Holiday Hoedown Throwdown. If you've never been part of this kind of holiday Hoedown Throwdown meetup thing before, you're in for a treat. It's 2 hours, unfiltered. We'll have a lot of people passing through, some of our regular guests, and most of all you who want to be part of it. So if you want to join us, again, it's off the air. No part of it ever ends up on the air, so we can say some things and do some things that we wouldn't do on the air. 2 hours of hoeing down. A $50 donation to get in. It's a fundraiser for the show via PayPal. Our PayPal link is under this video and all our videos. And then send an email to confirm that you did the PayPal move. Send it to mtsmeetup@gmail.com. So again, with the $50 donation on PayPal, just note HH or Holiday Hoedown or Hoedown or Throwdown or something just to let us know that's what it's for. And then send the email to confirm that you've done it. mtsmeetup@gmail.com. The Holiday Hoedown Throwdown, 2 hours of hoeing down. 6 o'clock.
Western wear required or no?
6 o'clock Pacific time, that is. 9 o'clock in the East. What's that on December 1st?
Western wear required? Do we have to get the hats
No,
out?
you know, hoedowns are, you're right, they're kind of associated with the square dance kind of, you know, but in this case, it's a more, what am I trying to say? Cosmopolitan hoedown.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
No boots required. All right.
December 1st. Wear your boots if you want, and we'd love to have all of you join us. The Holiday Hoedown Throwdown is December 1st at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. on the East Coast. So that's the story there.
Thompson Show.
Now there's you got Hoedown there, a social gathering at which lively folk dancing takes place. Oh, that's the official definition, Tony. Yeah.
So we have to have dancing?
I guess Kim will have to folk dance, which will be
Girl, you just...
I don't know.
Who is having that conversation?
I wasn't having it. Tony put up the... maybe Tony will do it. He just wants an excuse to dance. Tony does. B.O. Missed you, Mark. Getting in late, so I look forward to catching up on this episode and hearing all your stories from overseas. I just wanted to say great to have you back, even though Mo did a great job. Yeah, Mo was really terrific, at least the stuff that I saw. And thank you, B.O., for $25 in the super chat. Big shout out to you. Yeah. Trying to make ends meet. It's nice to get a little support. Thank you. And Jeff Moses, thank you for a $2 super sticker. Big shout out to you, Jeff Moses.
Big shout out.
Yeah. And that's the story. Is that everybody that I need to welcome back, Mark? We missed you, says Luis. So glad you survived South America. Jim Avila will always be an MT show HOFer, and his drop will forever bring us a smile. It is true. He is truly Hall of Fame. Thank you, Luis. Amy B. with a $3 super sticker. Thank you, Amy. Shout out to you.
Big shout out.
Jeff Moses, I just did. And Sylvia says, I heard that if a president starts a war, he can't be voted out until it's over. Did you hear that? Yeah, I don't know where you heard it, but it's total BS. Are you kidding? America, we had a war in Afghanistan that lasted 20 years. I mean, there were plenty of presidents during that time. Vietnam War. I mean, we can go through all the wars, all the American wars, and trust me, you can replace a president. PT says Trump is following the old adage, if you were being run out of town, get out in front of the mob and make it look like you're leading a parade. Also, Pam Bondi probably told Trump the evidence is gone. That's what I was saying before, that much of this may be dry cleaned by FBI and Justice Department, so we will see. But I will tell you that the narrative is not completely manageable at this point, I'd see. I'd suggest that there are just some aspects to this that are going to be tough to kind of contain. But tomorrow, Kim will tell you what's on the show. What's on the show tomorrow?
Oh, tomorrow is a big one. We've got David K. Johnston coming up on the show, and Jessica Denson will be here as well, and Jefferson Graham. It's going to be a good Mark Thompson show.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of stuff going on tomorrow on the show. I'm looking forward to it. So, guys, thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for the ways that you Do support us. Many of you are on PayPal or Patreon. Appreciate that. You can find both at themarkthompsonshow.com. And as I say, under all our videos, there are links to Patreon and to PayPal. So appreciate all of you. And now, the magnificent Shadow.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
We are out of time. Kim does an after party, though, so...
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Check that out. Until tomorrow, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.